Welcome to the Right Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Williams, best-selling romance author, book coach, and founder of Serenade Publishing. I've been an avid reader since I could hold a book and have spent over a decade immersed in the world of writing, editing, and publishing fiction. I know firsthand what it takes to turn a love of storytelling into a sustainable, soul-aligned author career. Each week, I share real talk about writing fiction, marketing smarter, and staying inspired, along with up-to-the-date industry insights and strategies that are working right now. You'll also hear from fellow authors, editors, and industry experts who are out there doing the work and making waves. Here, we put the woo in the work of writing, publishing, and growing your author business. Think of this as your creative business pep talk, packed with heart, hustle, and a little bit of magic. So get cozy and join me. Your writing journey starts now. Hey Scribe, and welcome back to the Right Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Williams, and I have such a treat for you today. If you've ever wondered how to build a sustainable and strategic author career, or how to navigate all the changes in publishing with confidence and creativity, then you are going to love this conversation. Today, I'm joined by the incredible Joanna Penn, award-nominated author, futurist, and the host of the Creative Penn Podcast, which she's been running for many years now. Her show has become a go-to resource for indie authors around the world, and over time, she's built a thriving, supportive author community that continues to inspire and empower. In this episode, we dive into her nonfiction work, the future of publishing in 2026 and beyond, how she's integrating AI into her business, and how she uses platforms like Patreon to deepen her connection with readers and writers. Joanna brings so much heart, vision, and practical wisdom. You're going to come away feeling inspired, informed, and ready to take action. Welcome to the Right Podcast, Joanna Penn. How are you?
Oh, thanks for having me, Sarah. I'm good. It's as I was saying, I've got my coffee. It's early morning here in the UK, so
Absolutely. I just wanted to give you a great big virtual hug because I don't think I would be here today at this stage of my business and with almost 10 books out now if it weren't for you. I started listening to you in 2015 on the Creative Penn Podcast. It was actually the very first podcast I ever listened to.
oh
And
wow.
it really just opened my eyes up to how people were going about self-publishing, especially because it was still very early days here in Australia. And when I turned down a traditional publishing deal to self-publish, everyone thought I was absolutely crazy. But I literally said to them, look, Joanna Penn's doing it and all these American authors are just killing it and I want to be like them.
Well, it's so funny you say that because, of course, I was in Australia when I first self-published. So back in 2007, I was living in Brisbane, and then I wrote my first novel. I was at Queensland Writers Centre, which I believe you were as well later on. And so 2010, I say 2009, 2010 was when I was doing that first novel. But yeah, so I first self-published when I was living in Ipswich and then Indooroopilly in Queensland. And it's funny because that really was the early days of self-publishing.
Yeah.
In Australia.
It wasn't even Kindles back then. I've heard you talk about PDFs and everything.
Yeah, I mean, the Kindle and the iPhone were launched in 2007. So when I first self-published in 2007, there was nothing. And then even when they launched it, there's still videos on YouTube of me holding up, a sort of how can we get on this device, this iPhone device? And it was Smashwords back then. So it was the only way. And then things developed over time. And I guess that's even a first point for people listening is since I first self-published, since I was in Australia, things have changed so much. And then, as you said, like even whatever that was, 7 years after that, things have continued to change and develop. And so it's so funny hearing you say that about 2015 as early days, because really it wasn't the early days of self-publishing. I mean, it really was. And I will say it was very, very hard back in 2007, 2008. I mean, people were really quite horrible about it. And that's one of the reasons I started networking with Americans, because, as you say, they were doing that. And also I realized that the Australian market was tiny. And so I was much better off marketing to an American audience. And that has remained sort of a focus of mine. Even though I live in the UK, I still focus mainly on the US market because it's so big. So I think that those early years in Australia taught me a lot and thickened my skin a lot. So I'm really thrilled that you found the show later on, and obviously continue to talk about this stuff and lead people in the same area. I mean, I got married in Noosa, so.
What did you? I live in Malay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know you're up on the Sunshine Coast, and yeah, so it's quite. We share a lot of history there.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, that's amazing. So let's rewind to before you started self-publishing. What actually made you want to write books and become an author?
Well, I mean, I always was a reader first, and I wrote journals. I wrote a lot of letters. I'm a real swot, I love studying. And so I always thought I wanted to write something, but I also, my mother was an English teacher. I went to the University of Oxford. I was very sort of prevented by a lot of cultural stuff that said the only book worth writing would be some kind of literary fiction. And although I read literary fiction, the books I really loved, I mean, I was an IT consultant. I worked for the mining industry in Australia. And I was like, it was a very good job, let me say that, but I was not happy. And so I used to read thrillers every day. And I used to go, and you know how the book industry is in Australia. Books are very expensive, physical books back then. And so I would go to the bookstore at lunchtime, and I was just buying thrillers like every day. And so eventually I was like, I want to write a thriller. And I think Dan Brown really helped with the Da Vinci Code, kind of changing things there. Also, Tim Ferriss with the 4-Hour Work Week. I was kind of writing a book at the time about trying to change my job, trying to find a new career. So I think it's really that I had tried different things. I did property investment in Australia and New Zealand. I'd run a scuba diving company. I was a freelance IT contractor. And I was like, none of this is suiting me. And I hit like 30, 35, as you do. And I was like, I've got to do something else with my life. And the only thing I really wanted to do was to write and read and write and travel. That's what I wanted to do. So that's really what I decided. It was also, I think, again, with technology, because it was the early days of blogging, I think I was able to see that I could have a business writing, whereas before that it was very, very hard to even consider that. I did professional speaking training in Australia as well, and thought I could be a speaker / writer, and that is really how I started. But basically it was that I was already running businesses, and I thought with the technology changes this would enable me to do that.
Ah, amazing. So how many fiction novels have you written now?
I think, well, the problem with fiction, right, is because I have novels, novellas, short stories, collections. So it's around, let's say, 20 full length, and then also novellas, short stories, and that kind of thing. I mean, and then with nonfiction, there's multiple editions of all the books. So it's funny, it becomes difficult, as you know, as time moves on. But yeah, I mean, that first novel I started at Queensland Writers Centre as Pentecost, and I self-published first as Pentecost, and then I rewrote that later. It's now Stone of Fire, the first in my Arcane Thriller series, which is 13 books at the moment, and 14th probably by the end of the year. But yeah, I did start fiction writing back then, and again designed it as a business, because, as you know, if you want to make money with fiction, you have to write series. It's literally the only way.
That's it. Yep. So you do have a new book coming out. I think you've just sent it into your editor as we go live. I'm excited about this one. Um, Sorry, what's it called again? Buried Bones?
Yeah, so it's called Bones of the Deep, and
Bones of the
actually
Deep. That's right.
it's another one it's actually set in the South Pacific. In 1999 I sailed from Fiji to Vanuatu on a tall ship, and actually that's how I ended up in New Zealand. I sailed on that ship, and then I met a New Zealander on the boat, and then went to Australia, and then on to New Zealand. And so yeah, it's been a long time since that trip, but I was something I'm doing in a current master's degree, and I was like, do you know what, I'm going to write this story finally after all these years. But yeah, that's Bones of the Deep, and that's it's not a series, it is a standalone, and I'm launching that on Kickstarter. People can see that at jfpenn.com/bones. And again, I guess we'll probably talk about it, but Kickstarter for launches is a very sort of big thing now, particularly, well, not just for fiction authors, but I think for fiction authors for standalone books. I'm essentially now writing standalones, doing a Kickstarter campaign, and then assuming that's the biggest money I'll ever make.
Yeah.
But you can't help it, if you want to write a story, you want to write a story.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm really excited for that one. And you talk about, I don't really want to call them mer people. Was that what you were calling
You can call them mer people.
You can call them mer people. That's the right word. I am so intrigued by that. I'm like, I want to read this one. Fantastic. So people who are very new to writing, which of your non-fiction books would you recommend they start with to really successfully build their author career right from the get-go?
Well, I do have craft books. So obviously I have How to Write a Novel, and my book Writing the Shadow, which is very much the craft side of things. But yeah, the business side of things, I guess if you want to do self-publishing, successful self-publishing, the 4th edition now is and it's a free ebook, free audiobook that people can get. I feel like there's self-publishing did used to be quite simple, but now there are so many choices to make, and I would urge people to try and keep it simple, to be honest. And even if people want to work with a traditional publisher, I think it's good to know your options. And to be fair, you're going to have to do marketing anyway, whichever way you publish. And that book talks about marketing, and then probably how to make a living with your writing that might help people in terms of the multiple streams of income. I know you have multiple streams of income, so do I. But yeah, over the years, I guess just as I've learned things, I've written non-fiction books and put it out there and podcasted as you do. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So many writers, they struggle to own the fact that they're running a business. They do just want to be, those artists who get to sit alone in their little cabins and write their novels. Isn't that the dream? What are some of the mindset shifts you think are essential for authors who want to build a sustainable, thriving career?
Well, I think that first question, you don't have to do this as a business. And I actually think most fiction authors in particular don't do this as a business. So even if you self-publish, you don't have to do this as a business. The definition of a business is something that makes a profit, and something that if you go to an accountant, they're like, okay, I can see why you made these business choices towards making a profit. And when I designed my business, it was always so I could leave my job, and I was a highly paid IT consultant. So I think the first decision to make is, do you even want to run a business? And if you don't, then this writing fiction is a fantastic art. It's a fantastic hobby, and a hobby can make some money. But the question is, if you're only making a few thousand a year, then isn't it better just to relax and write and not worry about it? Because if you are going to run a business, you have to do marketing, you have to organize the financial side, you have to make decisions around things you might not necessarily want to try or do. And, you might enjoy those things. So, for example, I do enjoy podcasting. I enjoy doing Kickstarters. I find them very creative. But there are certain things that we do that you have to do in order to run a business. So, for example, building an email list is one of the fundamentals. And people are like, oh, well, I don't want to email people. And it's like, well, you either have to get over that. Well, I mean, literally, you have to get over that. Or I don't want to do marketing. Well, you don't have to do marketing, but if you want to make money, then you are going to have to do some kind of marketing. Every single business does.
Yeah.
So I think that is something for people to really consider.
Absolutely.
You know, but again, I think it is really important to say you don't have to run a business to write good books, you know, get them professionally edited, publish them well, reach readers. I feel like the sort of making money with books has become such a focus in the indie author community in particular, that it does take away from just the joy of writing. And that, especially people who might be retired or semi-retired, sometimes it might be easier to keep your day job and write for the fun of it than put the pressure on your art. So I don't want to discourage people, but I do think that you either feel an attraction to running a business or you don't. And you have to be happy with your choices. What I would say is if you are going to traditionally publish, then you still should treat it seriously. One of the biggest mistakes that people make is signing contracts without even reading them or understanding them. And that can make people very unhappy down the road. For example, in Australia, I know people who have signed world English contracts for the life of copyright, and then the publisher has not published outside of Australia, which has left most of the money on the table, but they don't have the rights to self-publish in America, for example. So that would be a tip for people if you are looking at traditionally publishing and you get offered a world English contract, then first try not to sign world English, sign Australia, New Zealand or Asia Pacific rights, and keep the markets where you can self-publish more easily. Or if you are going to sign world English, you need to have a clause in there that says within 2 years, the book will also be published in US, UK, Canada, other places. So yeah, just some of the things to think about. But I do think people either feel, yes, I want to run a business, or a kind of no. You agree? I mean, you see a lot of authors. I feel like it's just not right for everyone.
Yeah, no, that is very true, very true. And there are easier ways to make money, absolutely.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I mean, to be honest, like especially both you and I right now, we have businesses that span nonfiction too. So this is definitely something like you can make a really good living just as a fiction author, but it's a very different living to someone who writes maybe one literary fiction novel every couple of years. A lot of those people do teach writing, which is great. But think about if you do want a business, you will often have to expand beyond just writing novels, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a little while ago, you did a fantastic podcast episode, which was all predictions for 2026. And I absolutely loved this episode. So, I'd love to dive into a couple of little things that you think are going to come. Especially now as we dive further into 2026. So what sort of trends or shifts do you think we should be paying attention to? I know Kickstarter is a big thing for you. Special editions have been around for a long time. Do you see anything else coming in?
Well, obviously, the AI stuff is something that's absolutely coming our way. I mean, it has been for a while now. So, I mean, that shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. I think, yeah, I think just what's changing is I guess, the volume of work that there is available across everything, which is why many of us are moving to things like Kickstarter. Shopify. But again, if you do direct sales, it is a different business model. You have to think about taxes. You have to, which you don't have to do if you just self-publish, say, on Amazon, because they deal with that for you. So I think considering you don't, again, that all of this is about choices. And I feel like people think, oh, I'm self-publishing and I have to do a Kickstarter and I have to do a Shopify store and I have to do all this stuff. You don't. You absolutely don't have to do that. What you do have to do is research and then make some specific decisions around what you think is going to be a good fit for you, is going to be a good fit for the business you want to run. So, for example, if you're an author with your first novel and no email list, then you're not going to do a Kickstarter or have a Shopify store, because you have to send the traffic to those things. What you will probably do is put your ebook into Kindle Unlimited and get used to one platform before you try a whole load of other stuff. So in terms of the trends, then yes, more authors are going to sell direct. I know you've done some beautiful hardbacks, haven't you?
I have, and my Shopify store literally just launched a couple of days ago, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, can I just ask on those hardbacks? Are you printing those in Australia? And because people ask me about this, and I don't really know the best printers in Australia. Is that a local printer to you, or is that something anyone could use?
I've tried pretty much everyone now. So I've tried, there is a printer, Calligraphic, in Sydney, who were great. I've also tried with Book Vault in the UK, which I love, except it takes a month for them to get here. But
yeah.
But then on my big special editions, I have them printed in China, so I'm just waiting on that ship to arrive now too. So I've definitely done all sources now. Some were cheaper than others, and some of the quality was better than others. I've decided to only do hardcovers now, so that was a big lesson for me to learn, because I did lose a lot of stock just from having it sitting here. And,
well, that's interesting. And I mean, even on that, I don't hold stock at all. So you don't have to hold stock to sell direct. I use BookVault, as you mentioned, but they do all the shipping. So I guess for people listening, this is an advanced strategy, because you do spend money getting all this sorted. As you say, it's not, most people are not going to lose the stock from humidity. Most people are, but most people will probably spend a lot on design. You have to test printers. You have to, because I think if you're going to do special editions, you want the quality to be exactly what you want. And the sprayed edges and all that kind of thing. So yeah, I use BookVault in the UK. Then just in terms of coming back to the trends, the integration of AI into most things now is just happening. And in the trends post, I do link to loads of articles around traditional publishing using all of these tools. So, and I think that's what people have to be aware of. And even if in Australia, people are like, oh no, they're not doing it here. Well, they're certainly doing it in the US, here in the UK, in Europe. And that can be around business, it can be around marketing. So even if you don't want to use AI for anything, in inverted commas, creative, you can still use it for, you really should be using it for marketing, for data analysis, for, strategy. You mentioned my Patreon. I just did a post there. I uploaded all my data to Claude and had it analyze it and do me a strategic review of 2025 and what I should be doing in 2026, which was just super, super helpful. And the type of thing that for a human to do it, they would have to spend a lot more time getting to know my business than having that. So also, for example, this is what I've wanted for ages, and now we have it, which is you can use AI to actually help you do ads. So again, on my Patreon, I've got a video of Claude helping me do my Amazon ads. I'm like, look, no hands, it's doing my ads for me. And that's been a moment. I'm like, this is what I want. I want this. So, this thing, and things like paid ads are a whole nother kettle of fish, obviously, but I personally find data analysis very hard. So I found the AI stuff to be just gold in terms of helping me with things. I've had to pay people quite a lot of money to do before and just haven't been able to work through my own questions. So yeah, I think all that makes a difference. Also, I mean, we are moving into agentic search, AI assisted discoverability. So again, even if you are resisting AI yourself, the rest of the world, you can't avoid it. You go onto Google, it's going to push you into AI discoverability. So I think all of that to say technology continues to move, and I just see it as I did in 2007. I was like, oh my goodness, this is going to change everything for authors. In 2007, with the launch of the Kindle and the iPhone, I was like, I'm going to build my business on this, and I did. And then I see the AI stuff, which I've been into for more than a decade, as the technology shift that's going to drive my next 20 years. So yeah, that's how I see it, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm definitely loving the idea of getting AI to help me with ads. That just sounds absolutely amazing. I'm going to be walking that one step by step. That's awesome. Let's talk about Patreon. I love your community. I've been a long time member of your Patreon now. How has that supported you, both your creative business and your author business as a whole? You use that, it's a paid subscription model for the people who want more of the Creative Penn, more of Joanna Penn.
Yes, you can. Well, it's changed. I mean, I got onto Patreon 2014, I think it was. So basically, my podcast, which I started in 2009. So the podcast was one of the very earliest podcasts in general, let alone in the writing community, and certainly one of the first in self-publishing. But I was doing it for the love of it, as most podcasters do. And then by 2014, 5 years in, I was like, this was costing me, because I was using AWS as my host. So I was paying hundreds a month in hosting fees. Again, things change and things get cheaper. But at the time, the podcast was costing me money, quite a lot of money. And I was like, I either have to stop this because it's not paying its way, or I have to find a way to fund it. So I started with ads. So I actually started working with sponsors. Kobo Writing Life was my first sponsor. They still are a sponsor all this time later. And then I also started Patreon. So people email me all the time and say, oh, should I start a Patreon? I'm like, I can't tell you that. I started mine in like 2014. It is not the same time. So it really depends on what you want to do with subscriptions. So for example, I know people writing long form essays who are doing better on Substack, for example, but Substack didn't exist in 2014. It wasn't even a thing. And then in terms of what's happened with my Patreon, so it started off as just support the podcast, and I'll do an extra show a month of answering your questions. And then over time, I still do an extra show a month of answering questions. But I also now, a couple of years ago, when the sort of AI hate wave was going through, I decided to put most of my AI content behind the Patreon. So now the Patreon is primarily focused on sharing how I use AI tools, because having that outside of a paywall just attracts a lot of negativity, and I was just done with that. And again, this was sort of another decision point a few years back. I was like, I'm loving this. I think it's super useful. I think this is going to change a lot. But the same as back in 2007, when people said to me, in Australia, you're going to ruin your career. Your writing must be really bad for you to consider self-publishing. You're never going to make any money. Like and some really quite nasty comments to an early writer. I've had all that and more this time around as well. But now I'm older and wiser, and I can take it. But the Patreon now is primarily for AI curious and or AI positive authors, and then also those people. I do have people, patrons, email me and say, I'm still not AI curious or AI positive, but I'm here for the extra show a month. So that's fine too. But the point is that when I started it, it was to support what I wanted to help the community with. And if people now it's very, very different. So Patreon is a different kind of platform. Substack is a different kind of platform. Some people use like Circle for their communities. I didn't start calling this a community, my Patreon community, until, I don't know, a couple of years ago. So another tip would be, if you want to do subscriptions, and a subscription is somebody pays every single month, you have to know what you're going to deliver every single month. And I see a lot of fiction authors in particular have a very difficult time with subscription models, because most fiction authors do not produce something new every month. And if they try and do that, it can become very stressful for them. And then also, most fiction readers know that they will be able to get that book later anyway. So to do a fiction Patreon or a fiction community, I think you just have to be really, really sure as to what you're offering and whether enough people want it to justify the work. I don't know, have you seen Patreon do really well for people? And when I say really well, I mean you've got to be making hopefully over $1,000 a month, really.
Yeah, for sure. And I have seen what you were saying about Substack, where authors have been trying to publish a chapter a month, which, works for them if they can get that done. But the reader's kind of like, oh, but then I have to wait a whole nother month for the next chapter. So, I haven't really seen anywhere that it's working really well. But certainly once I do find an author who's making it work really well, I want to get them on my podcast and maybe tell them to come over and talk to you too.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the people doing subscription fiction are on platforms like Ream, and where people, and that is a chapter a day. So, but interestingly, I think the fiction serial model, Kindle Vella tried it for, I don't know, 5 years or something. And if Amazon shuts something down because it's not making enough money, that just has to say something, right? If Amazon can't make it work. So Kindle Vella was their attempt at the kind of serial subscription model. But yeah, have a look on Ream. If people are like, no, I want to write that way, I want to do that kind of thing, then have a look on Ream. But again, it's very genre specific, I think.
Yes, absolutely. Well, looking back on everything that you've built, is there one thing that you know now that you wish you'd known earlier on in your journey?
I mean, I think on the craft side, I remember, again, when I was back in Australia, I went to so many talks at the Queensland Writers' Centre about like finding your voice, finding your author voice. And I spent too much time trying to learn about finding my author voice, whereas actually the reality is that it emerges from actually writing. So if someone had told me that earlier, that would have really helped, because I think the phrase finding your author voice is wrong. I think it is let your author's voice emerge, I think is a much better thing, but it's possibly less saleable. So, I mean, you've probably been to the Sydney Book Fair was the first sort of, or the Sydney Writers, whatever it is, but they have a big festival, right? Sydney Writers Festival. Yeah. And I remember going to those things and I was just like, oh, how can I find this? And I think relaxing a bit into just writing more books would have really helped. But no, I mean, I think in terms of the mindset, I think I've always just been very curious and tried things that other people have shied away from. And I think that has helped me. So, for example, starting my podcast in 2009, before it was really a thing, was amazing and helped me break out and help me meet people. Like, I just didn't have any author friends in Australia. And so I ended up making friends through my podcast. And then I met people on Twitter, which had just launched at the time. And some of those people are some of my best friends. Like, all these years later. So I think for people who are just starting out, I would say a bit of patience is important. Like, keep writing, keep experimenting, keep meeting people too, because your community will kind of grow over time. But yeah, there's to be fair, there's really nothing I would necessarily do differently. The mistakes I've made, I've learned from and have helped me. So launching my first book it wasn't even a launch. I printed 2,000 books and then most of them ended up in the landfill because I didn't know anything about marketing, but that started my whole marketing journey. So I think you just have to experiment and try things. Definitely be very careful about contracts you sign. So the only thing I do regret is signing some particular contracts which are still a problem for me, which at the time I did because I couldn't afford to do things myself. But what I should have done was just wait. And those are audiobook contracts. I wish I had not done those. But slowly I get myself out of these things, but it takes many years to get out of these things.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. You're such a generous soul, and I have loved being a part of your community. Thank you for building it. And I just really appreciate you taking the time to come and chat to me today. So thank you.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. And for everyone listening, the Creative Penn podcast, Penn with a double N, is probably the best place to find more information. And well, thanks so much for having me, Sarah.
Wasn't that amazing? Joanna brings such clarity and depth to these big conversations. And after so many years of hosting the Creative Penn podcast, it's no wonder she's built a thriving community of writers who are thinking boldly and building businesses on their own terms. If this episode sparked something for you, I hope you walk away feeling more equipped and more excited to grow as a sustainable and strategic author. There's never been a better time to take charge of your writing life and create a career that truly works for you. Make sure to check out Joanna's books, podcast, and Patreon community. I'll pop all the links in the show notes for you. And if you're ready for the next step, whether it's finding clarity, getting organized, or finally hitting publish, head over to Serenade Publishing. Thanks so much for being here. If you loved this episode, share it with a writing friend, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a moment of encouragement and inspiration. I'll see you next time on The Right Podcast. Thanks so much for listening to The Right Podcast with Sarah Williams. If you enjoyed today's episode, it would mean the world if you'd leave a review and share the show with your writer friends. It helps more creatives find their way to us. And don't forget to follow Serenade Publishing on Instagram and TikTok for more writing tips, publishing advice, and exciting events to keep you inspired. Keep writing, keep dreaming, and know that I'm here to support you every word of the way.